Hi, do you know who Samuel Clemens is? Well, if you don't, maybe you know him by his pen name, Mark Twain. If Mark Twain were alive today, he was born 1835, so if he were alive today, he would be 190 years old. And as a 190-year-old man, he can tell you that he has seen uh, mortgage interest rates in the threes or even sub three one time in his life. Same time that we saw them, right? Which was a few years back. Well, it's not the same market, right? It's a different interest rate environment. So now it's what, like 7% or something like that? Yeah, I think the historical average going back to 1971, I talk about this in other videos, is basically 7.76%, right? 7.8%. That's the historical average. But remember, the rates were that low because they were artificially kept low, right, to stimulate the economy during a worldwide pandemic, by the way. Where are we now? Well, the Mortgage Bankers Association and Fannie Mae are projecting that maybe we will see a little bit of an ease on the 30-year fixed interest rate at the end of 2025. That's this year. Maybe 6.5%. Not much of a difference from where we're at now, right? Half a percent, right? And maybe they'll fall to below 6% in the end of 2026. Okay, and the National Home Association of Home Builders has a little bit better picture, a rosier picture, if you will. And they're saying that maybe we get to 6.5% by the middle or end of this year, 2025. And that, again, it should fall below 6% by the end of 2026. They also think the same thing. Uh, so, what happens when homeowners need to sell, right? Because let's face it, life changes typically are going to precipitate a change in a housing situation, right? There's a birth, there's a death, there's a job loss, there's a job transfer or promotion, things of this nature, right? Well, I'm Bert Tade. I'm a realtor in San Antonio, Texas, as well as the broker owner of Santino Properties LLC, a boutique firm in real estate that helps buyers and sellers of residential real estate win in a competitive marketplace through the unique and effective use of marketing. So I'd like for you at this moment to take a moment to subscribe to this channel. That way you can get more relevant content. I try to educate the public in such a way that I can use my over decades worth of experience in the real estate business to dispense good, solid advice, actionable advice, so you can be purposeful in your home search, or if you're just trying to learn about the real estate market, where we each and every day on these videos anyway try to sort through the hoopla, the hype, and yeah, even the media negativity surrounding our real estate industry. So what happens if a homeowner has to sell, like we're talking about here, or if they have a strong desire to sell, right, or to change their living situation, right? Well, certainly their new mortgage is going to be markedly higher, right? Especially if they refinanced during those pandemic years, right? Again, like I was talking about, mortgage rates in the threes, even sub three. So you have basically two choices that you're faced with if that's your situation, that you have to move or that you have a strong desire to move to change your housing situation. And you can, number one, continue to live in the home that no longer fits your needs. Or number two, you can move to a home that better fits your needs. Yeah, you're going to take on a higher interest rate, because you just changed the situation and now you qualified for your mortgage with the current interest rates. But you're in that second scenario, if rates go down and they do drop, sometime in the future, then of course you could refinance that mortgage, right? But if you stay in the home, but you'd have to stay in the home that fits your needs and desires you get to stay in the home that fits your needs and desires if you already live there, right? So all you're basically changing is not the house now, but instead you're just changing the mortgage that's on the house, right? If and when those rates do come down, right? None of us have a crystal ball, and so there's no way of knowing, right? But I'm giving you the statistics or the projections and where the interest rates will be at the end of 2025 and maybe in 2026, based on some of the experts and certainly industry leaders and what they're saying, right? I try to keep up with that. So I tell you, what I hear more and more these days is that people are going to grin and bear it, right? And they're going to continue to live in the wrong home because they own the right mortgage. Okay, that's one way of approaching it, right? But remember that when you're buying a house, we've talked about this in other videos, that when you're buying a house and you're buying a mortgage, right? The house you buy, you can live in the house. The mortgage, well, it's an entirely different thing. You can change that anytime you want. You stay in the house, it's the same house, but the mortgage can be changed, right? And by the way, we're going to be talking about buying a house with the right mortgage, if there is such a thing, right? Like we're talking about in another video, as I go over loan assumptions. Just Google that, and kind of take a look, around my channels, wherever whatever platform you're watching this video on, to look into loan assumptions, right? Because I did another video on that as well. But since I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis on February 2nd, 2008, quite a long time ago, 17 years. And, since then, I've always listened to people say, well, life is short. Okay, everybody says that, right? But I've adopted a saying that health is fragile. And you just don't know what how much time you have on this earth, right? So life is too short and health is way too fragile to not be happy and content in your living environment, right? I mean, we do, after all, live in the greatest country, and really the greatest country the civilization, mankind has ever seen, and it's the United States of America. Well, what is the U.S. in its very essence? It's a land of choices, a land of opportunity. And as long as you can handle the payment, if you need to move, then you can get the right house now, and you can always adjust the mortgage when it makes sense financially. It's a possibility. So if your only justification as a buyer has been to stay put because of the current interest rates, so you're going to continue to live in the house that you're currently in that doesn't fit your needs, either it's too small or it's too large, whatever that is, or you're renting, right? Remember, you can change that to the right negotiated price and terms whenever you want. We live in America, right? And change the mortgage in the future if it makes sense. But when rates increase, let's face it, fewer buyers can afford the payments that are associated with home purchases, right? And fewer buyers can qualify and afford to pay those higher payments. And of course, you factor in the increase in home values, which we've seen here, well, across the nation, frankly, right? But even in San Antonio, we saw all that COVID appreciation, as they say, right? When homes being sold were scarce and the demand was really high and people were overpaying for houses, right? It shot up the home values, and we find out where we're at, and find where we are now, which is higher home values. So it's a perfect storm for buyers, right? The current higher interest rate environment, as well as higher home values. So you factor all this in, you basically, buyers unfortunately are being priced out of the market. So in this current interest rate environment, if you can only afford to buy if that payment can come down, well, how do you do it? we talked about loan. I talked about loan assumptions a minute ago. That's another video. It's a different video altogether, and you can look for it. But the topic of this video is a strategy which is an outstanding way to overcome interest rate increases. And I'm really excited to tell you about this. And it's worth listening to the rest of this video. I know we've been here for a couple minutes already, but it's interest rate buy downs, right? That's the topic of this video, and it's an outstanding way to get a better rate. So you can lower a buyer's effective interest rate and the monthly mortgage payment that corresponds with that lower interest rate with interest rate buy downs, thus helping the buyer to qualify. So, like I've been saying, why settle, if to continue living in your current situation, either renting or in a house that doesn't make sense for you, if I can show you a payment that would make more sense for you, right? And I'm not talking about in these scenarios, sacrificing amenities in a home or sacrificing the size or square footage of a home or the location of the home to an area that doesn't make sense for you, or that the commute to work is going to be too far, or even a lower priced home. I'm not talking about any of those things, right? Instead, I'm talking about working with an experienced professional who knows about these interest rate buy downs, understands them, can dispense good sound advice to you, and on how they work, and how you can even ask the seller to help you pay for those, right? Because there's two primary categories that buy downs fall into, and those are temporary buy downs and permanent buy downs, right? So, and buy downs, by the way, are nothing new, right? It's like they say, right? You wait long enough, right? The old comes back and it becomes new again, right? I don't know. It's like bell-bottom jeans from the 1970s or whatever, right? And a couple facts related to buy downs. First is that lenders really don't care what the interest rate is or how many discount points excuse me, how many discount points are being charged to the borrower. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in a moment to explain what those points are, right? Momentarily, I'll tell you what discount points are. The lenders are more concerned about yield, right? And that's really a combination of the interest rate and these discount points that I'm talking about, because the total of the two is referred to as the yield. So on a 30-year fixed mortgage, which is the most common type of loan that borrowers will seek when purchasing a home, each point or discount point paid to the lender is basically a percentage point of the loan amount. Okay, so stay with me here, right? So easy math, right? On a permanent buy down. Let's start with permanent buy downs. So, for example, on a $100,000 loan, easy math, 1 point is $1,000. Okay, 1% of 100,000, $1,000. Each discount point has a value of 0.25% of interest. Okay, a quarter of an interest point. Okay, so by this math, for a 1% interest rate deduction, that would take 4 quarter points, right? Or $4,000, because each quarter point is $1,000, right? So to lower the effective interest rate, a full point, it would take $4,000. Okay, so at the time of offer, your real estate professional can offer on your behalf and ask in paragraph 12 of our Texas 1 to 4 family purchase and sale agreement. In paragraph 12, they can ask for the seller to pay for those discount points, a monetary amount, right? And they can help you in the way of closing costs to help you purchase those discount points, right? So let's just say the market rate and 7%. And by the way, for the purposes of this video, I'll be using 7% throughout in all these examples. I'm going to give you some really, really terrific examples, and it's about to get really, really good here. So listen up. Use the back button if you need to. 15 seconds back if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or whatever platform it is. Okay, so if it's 7% interest rate, and the buyer asks for the seller 4% of the sales price to bring down the interest rate. Okay, that's 1 percentage point that you're lowering your interest rate. So now it's 6% interest for the life of the loan for the 30 years. Okay, so you're asking the seller to pay 1%, right? And again, it's going to be $4,000, okay, for 1%. You can ask for 6%, right, for 1.5% of the market interest rate, right? So it'd be a 5.5% fixed rate for 30 years. Okay, why? Because 6%, it's a quarter percent of interest for every $1,000. Okay, so we're asking for 6% of the sales price for 1.5% of interest rate that you're going to save. So now your fixed interest over the course of 30 years is 5.5%. Now, it's going to be a lot easier for the buyer to pay 5.5% interest rate than 7% interest rate, right? Now you can afford those monthly payments. It's come down substantially. I'm going to give you some examples here because you're probably wondering, scratching your head like, okay, well, what does that really mean, right? Substantially lower payments. Okay, so average price of a house in San Antonio as of last month was $352,000 and change, right? So let's just say 350, okay, for easy math. At 7% interest rate, the principal and interest payment on that loan, $350,000 loan, for example, let's just say you're borrowing $350, it's $2,328.56, $2,328.56. Okay, at 5.5%, you're not going to believe this, $1,987.26. That's a savings of $341.30 a month, every single month. And by the way, the actual interest saved, because I did a study on this as I was preparing to film this video, the interest savings is $437 a month, just in interest alone. The difference between 7% interest and 5.5% interest on a $350,000 loan. That's not including we're not even factoring the down payment and all that stuff, right? Just stick with me, right? So the seller could offer to lower your rate instead of lowering his sales price or her sales price 6%. Because let's face it, right? By the way, currently, as of the market stats as of last month, the average sales price to original list price is 93.3%. That means across the board, on average, sellers are taking a 6.7% hit on their sales price. Okay, so right there where I'm talking about, 6%. All right. So it's the same out of pocket for the seller, 6%, because his bottom dollar number is net number at the closing table. It's gonna be 6% less. So if he sells you the house for 6% less, right? And by the way, that's the most common form of buy down, right? Is a price reduction. That's what all real estate agents advise their clients to do, right? That's their go-to. Well, just lower the price. how about instead offering a 6% interest rate buy down to actually help the buyer? Because if you lower the price of the home 6%, right, which is the market average here in San Antonio, right, 6%, then it's going to save you $201.59. So now that same $350,000 house is $329,000, right? They're saving you $21,000. Great, that's nice, cool. But if you were to pay this is pretty amazing. What if you were to do a reduction of 6% in the sales price? I told you it's $329,000. That's the current 7% interest rate. Okay. Well, that is going to be the interest in the first month of interest is just interest alone is $1,919.17. 1919. Okay. If you were to pay them full price for the house, $350,000 for the house, but you asked them for a 6% contribution for closing costs, so you can buy your rate down. Remember, 6%, it's going to effectively be a 5.5% interest rate, right? Six discount points. It's going to get you a 5.5%. We're going to buy it down 1.5%. Well, guess what? At full price, the other one, we negotiated a 6% price reduction. So now your sales price is $329 at 7% interest rate. Okay, because it's still the market interest rate. But if you offer that seller your full asking price, here's $350, but buy my rate down 1.5%, it's the same thing at the closing table for the seller. Your interest in the first month is $1,604.17. That's exactly $315 more that you would pay with a price reduction as opposed to an interest rate buy down. $315 more in interest, just in interest alone. Yikes. It's a lot of money, right? So instead, offer the seller the full asking price to be competitive. Just ask him for some closing costs, right? It's the same as to him or her as the current sales price reduction. Even less, because currently it's 6.7%. You're only asking them for 6%. And guess what? You're out offering a full asking price, and you're going to keep the comps up a little bit higher in your new neighborhood, right? Because you didn't beat the seller down, $21,000. So it's keeping the comps higher, right? So your house is going to be worth more in the long run, because you're going to live in that neighborhood now too, right? Well, now's a good time for me to mention, by the way, what are the loan stipulations? How much can they contribute, right? So here's some maximum amounts, right? The seller can contribute for closing costs. It really depends on the loan type. Okay, I'm going to go through each one with you. But like conventional, for example, it that's one loan type, but it also depends on the amount of the down payment. So with conventional loans, if your down payment is less than 10%, then the seller can contribute up to 3% of the purchase price. If it's between 10% and 25% down payment, then the seller can contribute up to 6% of the purchase price. And if you're putting more than 25% down for your down payment, then the seller can contribute up to 9% of the purchase price. For FHA loans, it's 6% of the purchase price or appraised value, whichever one is lower. Okay. For VA, it's 4% of the purchase price. However, I was talking with a lender partner, a good friend of mine. Shout out to Pat Fitzgerald at USA Mortgage. And Pat was telling me that lately he's seen underwriters look at files that they're asking up to 6%, and they won't even blink an eye. They won't even. It's for a veteran. Come on, right? They won't even think twice about a 6% contribution to closing costs by the seller in paragraph 12 of our 1 to 4 family. So for USDA loans, this is a great loan, by the way. If you want to live in rural America, it's 6%, up to 6% of the purchase price, and zero down, by the way, just like VA. Ask me about that. 210-376-TALK. If you have any questions about that, just text me or reach out by phone, and I'll tell you all about the USDA loan. It's pretty cool. And a little known secret about San Antonio, where it's actually a very, very highly densely populated area, but all the houses qualify for USDA, right? They're USDA qualified, right? Just reach out to me for more information about that. It's a little known secret in San Antonio. And for investment loans, 2% is a maximum that the seller can contribute to closing costs, and that's with any amount of down payment. By the way, the exact costs for I gave you some general rule of thumb, of point, one discount point is equal to 0.25% of an interest rate. It'll vary from one lender to another. It depends on a few things, right? The lender, type of the loan, market conditions, things of that nature. Just talk to a licensed lender. They'll give you, some good guidance. So finally, the last thing I want to talk about here are temporary interest rate buydowns. And this is special financing that the seller can offer to allow more buyers to budget and qualify for the loans. And it's not super complicated at all. It's just not easy to demonstrate here on this video, right? Because of the I'm kind of going back and forth with, kind of verbally telling you everything. And I don't have a fancy, graphics department. I'm just a guy trying to give you guys, some good solid information and resources. I don't know how to do all that fancy stuff. I don't know how to create thumbnails, and that's about it. But anyway, the total gross amount of the temporary buy down, and I'll explain this to you in just a minute, is really going to come, from the proceeds from the seller, is going to be driven by the monthly and the annual subsidies that are required to buy down that interest rate. So we're typically looking at two types of buy downs. There's a 3-2-1 buy down, and there's a 2-1 buy down. 3-2-1 is over the course of 36 months, so 3 years. The 2-1 buy down is over the course of 24 months, or 2 years, right? And the way it works on a 3-2-1 buy down, for example, is, again, we're using the 7% interest rate example, and we're saying 7% is the current interest rate. You take 3-2-1, so the interest rate is 3% less in the first year, so it's 4% in the first year, and that's for 12 months. Okay, so it's 4% interest. The second year, the second 12 months is going to be 5% interest. Okay, and then it goes. It's kind of a gradual thing, and then it goes up to 1% off of the 7% to 6% interest in the third year, right? And then it goes back in month 37 after the 3 years are up. It goes back to the original market rate for the balance of the term, right? So the rest of the 27 years, right? So 3-2-1. It's 3 points the first year, 2, and then 1. And then a 2-1 buy down is the same basic thing, right? So in the first year on a 7% interest rate, it's going to be 5% the first year, 6% the second year, and then 7% for the remainder of the balance of the loan, right? For the other 28 years. But it's especially helpful in the following circumstances. If you're only going to stay in the house for a few years, then a temporary buy down might make sense to you. does it make more sense to do a 2-1 buy down or a 3-2-1? Ask your lender partner. Okay? And I can put you in contact with Pat. He can explain those to you as well. He's a wealth of knowledge, right? So another scenario or circumstance would be if you expect to get a raise or a promotion over the next, year, 2, 3 years, then you can also go with a temporary buy down as opposed to a permanent buy down, which I was talking about earlier in this video. Or if you're a gambler, then you can say, well, I expect for the interest rates to go down in the next 2 years on a 2-1 buy down, or a 3-2-1 buy down. I think it's going to go down in the next 3 years, right? And I can refinance. I don't know, it's gamble. Okay, and nobody has a crystal ball, as I talked about. Now, how can they do this, right? How can they offer you these buy downs? Well, when you get a loan at the closing table, you're signing a promissory note or a promise to pay, right? It's often referred to as a note, right? And investors buy notes. They're on the secondary mortgage market. Promissory notes are bought and sold, right? So, and basically what they're doing is you're lowering the effective interest rate that the investor would otherwise be able to earn in today's interest rate environment. So they're getting less money. So what they do is those discount points that you're buying at the closing table is cash out of the seller's pocket. And in a minute, we're going to talk about other sources. But it's cash, and they just pay that cash directly to the investor. So it's like prepaid interest, right? And whatever cash is brought to the closing table by the buyer or the seller, when the note is sold on the secondary mortgage market, they give the investor that cash as well, right? They get a credit there. Excuse me. So, brings me to my last point, right? No pun intended, right? Okay, so the buyer doesn't have to rely on the seller alone to contribute for these interest rate buy downs, right? They're temporary or permanent interest rate buy downs, because you can explore other sources, right? The buyers themselves. Now, here's something really cool I want to share with you. Stick with me, because this is going to be real, like a mind-blowing thing, right? The buyers themselves can buy down that rate, and it's considered prepaid interest. So guess what? It's tax deductible in the year in which it was paid. Listen to this. So, for example, one discount point is purchased. We already remember from earlier in this video, that's $4,000. Okay? It's 0.25% interest rate for every $1,000, right? So it's 4 times 4, right? $4,000. If you're in a 35% tax bracket, you get to save 35% of that $4,000 in taxes. Okay, so multiply 4,000 times 0.35, and that's $1,400 you get to save. So on your taxes, so you can write off. So the net cost of that buy down is really only $2,600, right? And the principal and interest is reduced from at 7% interest rate on a $350,000 house. It's now reduced from 7% to 6%, and the difference is a principal and interest payment of $2,329 per month if it's 7% interest, to $2,098 per month. You're literally going to save $231 per month. Okay? And if you divide that $231 per month into $4,000 that you invested to buy down that rate, that one interest rate percentage point, okay, it's only going to be 17 months before you recover the cost of that permanent buy down that you bought for $4,000. 17 months. And it's a gift that keeps on giving because you continue to save. It's permanent buy down, so it's 6% interest rate for the life of the loan. And guess what? Over the 30-year period, that difference between 7% and 6% interest, it's a savings of, ready for this? $82,847. $82,847 over the life of the loan for only investing $4,000. $2,600 of which you actually had to pay because $1,400 of it you got to write off on your taxes. Pretty cool, huh? So another source I'll just mention is buyer. If their employer is relocating them, right? There's a corporate transfer of some kind. The employer's paying to relocate the employee to another state where maybe there's a difference in interest rates or something like that. I don't know. Ask your relo company you're working with. That could be another source of them matching or paying down discount points, right? And finally, here's a really, really good tip for you guys, relatives. The annual gift tax limit for 2025, I think also called the gift tax exclusion, right, is a maximum of $19,000 per person before you have to file a gift tax return, right? You don't have to report to the IRS. $19,000 per person. Well, guess what? For a couple, it's $38,000. Now, can each, let's say it's a married couple gifting money to another couple, is it $38,000 per person? So $76,000? I don't know. I'm not an accountant. I don't know. Ask your accountant. But for sure, $38,000 for a married couple buying a house, right? Before they have to report it to the IRS. $38,000. That's another source for buy down because, in the past, down payment and closing costs, they've been for years and years and years. I mean, people are gifted money, different varying amounts because like last year it was only 18,000 was the threshold for the gift tax. Now it's 19,000 in 2025. But in the past to purchase a house, the gift was given for down payment and closing costs, which is awesome. But these gifts can also provide permanent or temporary buy downs as well. A lot of people don't know that. You can use those funds for temporary buy downs or permanent buy down, either one. So again, as long as you're working with competent professionals that know what they're doing, you can do this. Mom and dad want to give you a gift. Great. Right? That's mom and dad on the husband's side. How about mom and dad on the wife's side? I think you can do that. You can get another gift from them. I don't know. Consult your tax advisor. And finally, gifts, on another note, I wanted to mention this. They can also help people that are over indebted, right? And of course they have lower credit scores because, their DTI or the debt to income ratio is going to come down, right? Once they can use that money to pay down credit cards, pay down debt, right? So by paying off debt, you're going to decrease those LTV ratios, and you're also going to improve credit because what is it? The credit scores. I think 30% of it has to do with the debt that one carries. It affects the credit scores. So that is the topic of interest rate buy downs. I know we ran a little bit long on this video. If you're still watching, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully this has been interesting for you because listen, I mean, it's a really powerful tool to be able to afford to change your living situation. Ask the seller for closing costs. Offer them full asking price. I don't know. Lower the asking price and ask for buy down money. I don't know. Consult your your realtor. They can give you a sound advice on this, right? And if they don't know about interest rate buy downs, then either find somebody who does know what interest rate buy downs are, another agent in your city, or just ask them to research it, I guess. Right, if you're committed to that particular agent. So that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching my video again. Hopefully it's been interesting for you. I'm Realtor Bert Tade. I'm also broker owner of Santino Properties LLC in San Antonio, Texas. Thanks for watching the video, and be sure to look for my video on loan assumptions. That's a whole other topic I'd like to talk to you about.